Hi, I'm Paul McNiff with Canon. We're here at NAB 2015 in the Canon booth. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the new C300 Mark II. One of the most important things, and it's not spec related, is that the C300 Mark II is not actually a replacement for the C300. The C300 still exists. It's still in our lineup, and it's very, very much discounted right now. But the C300 Mark II is a substantial improvement over the previous one. Obviously, the biggest advancement is going to be that it's now 4K internal. It'll also do 2K internal at 10 or 12-bit. The 4K is going to be 10-bit at 422. Now, the 2K you can do at 12-bit 422 or at 10-bit RGB 444. The maximum frame rate that you're going to be able to do in 4K is going to be 30p. So there's not a whole lot of overcranking capability, but there's a lot more when you get into the 2K. You can do the 2K up to 60p, or you can crop the sensor and then get up to 120p. So since you're already dealing with a 4K sensor, you have plenty of room in which you can crop in and push in there in order to get still 2K imaging from it. Now, speaking of the sensor, it's a brand new sensor. All of the previous Cinema EOS cameras shared the same sensor. This new one is very advanced. It gathers light much better, which allows it to maintain smaller amounts of noise at higher ISOs. Speaking of higher ISOs, the ISO goes up to 102,400. We also expanded the ISO range in the downward capacity, so it goes down as low as 100. Now, one of the interesting things about that is the ability of it to maintain the highlight detail in terms of dynamic range, which is now 15 stops. And 15 stops of dynamic range it's quite a lot, and it's one of the biggest advancements in terms of the camera. The base ISO is 800, and it's at 800 that you start to see the greatest capacity to maintain detail in the highlights. Now, the issue there obviously is going to be, well, I need more highlight detail when I'm shooting in an area that I have more light, like say a bright sunny day on the beach, and I needed to shoot at a wide aperture in order to maintain a very shallow depth of field. In order to allow for that, we took one of the most well-received features of all of the previous Cinema EOS cameras, and that's the built-in neutral density filters. And we kind of changed that system a little bit. The previous ones had been all individual filters, a 2-stop, a 4-stop, and a 6-stop filter. None of them were layered. What we've done now is put in 2 filter wheels. And with those 2 filter wheels, we've got a 2 and a 4, and then we've got a clear window, and we've got a 6-stop. You can use those 2 separate wheels of ND filters to layer the existing filters if you enable it in the menu and expand the neutral density, so that you can then get up to 8 or 10 stops of neutral density built right into the camera. We have a new codec as well, which is part of how we're able to record internally. I don't think I mentioned this, we record internally on CFast cards. There's also an SD card that you can do very, very small HD proxies to in order to send to editorial and things like that. The codec we're calling XAVC, and it is an it's an H.264 MPEG-4 variant. We took the existing dual pixel autofocus, which was part of the C300, 100, and 100 Mark II. That's even more advanced than the C300 Mark II. And it's advanced in such a way that there are more lenses now that will be able to enable the face detection mode, and you will be able to enable the tracking. Plus, you can move around the little box instead of it just being a center-weighted autofocus. But probably the best feature is that it allows for what we're calling dual pixel focus guide, which is for manual focusing. A lot of people, it's their job to focus. They don't want an autofocus system, and that's totally understandable, and it doesn't lend itself to every kind of project. But when you're shooting in 4K, critical focus is much more critical because of the higher resolution. So using the same technology that allows for the autofocus to work, instead of it running the autofocus motor, it puts an indicator on the screen that will tell you if you are a little bit in front of or behind the focus area for the subject. And it turns green when you're actually in the exact spot where you're supposed to be focused on the subject. So it's got autofocus for people who need it as individual operators, and it's got this dual pixel focusing guide for people whose job it is to pull focus.